We are going to dig into Genesis 27 tonight again for a few minutes. We started the story a little bit last week, the story of Isaac's blessing of his two boys. As I was chatting with a couple of people last week and this week, a few of them commented that this isn't something that seems to be done in our culture anymore. There was a moment where it was still done. Certainly my mother's generation and the generation before here in Quebec remember a moment when the French-Canadian father, at New Year's, actually, every New Year's, the kids would come before him and the father would bless each one of his children with words of blessing for the new year that had begun. And as a couple of people said, this really isn't done in the same way, I thought it really interesting that as Enoch, our student minister, and I have chatted together, we're both PKs, we're both preachers' kids. We grew up in the manse. We grew up as sons of ministry parents. And it's been funny to talk together about the way that created expectations for us and the struggle that Enoch and I both have had to live up to our father's expectations and to get our father's blessing and our father's approval. And sometimes I wish that there had been an event, a moment where my dad would have, put his hands on my head. And I don't know whether I would have worked harder to get it or not, but certainly in a day-to-day, we struggled to get this blessing. But in the Middle East, it's really serious business. It's really a serious, important moment. And as much as Isaac and Esau kind of try to do it discreetly in the back, because I think Isaac and Esau both realized that Esau had given up his birthright to Jacob, and Isaac still wants to bless his older son. He's still a traditional about this, and all of this goes together. That moment when the father would have blessed his oldest son, would have given him half of the estate so that he could carry on and care for all those that needed to be cared for and continue the family business and the family tradition and the family legacy. And all of that gets skirted about. It gets skirted about because of the lentil soup with Jacob and Esau. It gets skirted about because Esau gets called into Isaac's tent alone, and Rebekah's listening in the back, all of this mess that we saw last week. We pick up the story tonight. Jacob has wound his way there by deceit. He has lied several times outrightly. Rebekah has arranged this, has cooked a meal that's a pretend meal. It's not real game and venison like Isaac likes, but she's sort of pampered it up so it tastes that way. I don't know if Isaac's taste buds were going along with his eyesight, but he got fooled. And now in verse 26 we pick up and Isaac blesses Jacob. Then his father Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelt the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the due." Let me just pause there. This is an interesting comment. I should have mentioned probably to start. There's a couple of scholars who take a look at the Pentateuch, at the 5 books of Moses, and they chop it up, and they think we've got 4 or 5 different authors. And the way they think they can divide this up is that there are 4 or 5 different names that are used for God from Genesis in the 5 books of Moses. And they think that each one of these comes from a different tradition. And so depending on the story, they take the story and they cut it up with a carving knife. Okay, in this story, God is called by this name, and in this story is called by this name. And so it's kind of like if they, take all the pieces and then divide them into 4 different books based on what's names used for God. This is an interesting chapter. There's great difficulty in chopping this one up because God is referred to by 3 or 4 different names in chapter 27. When the chapter begins and Isaac looks at Esau and he talks to Esau about giving him blessing, he refers to God as Yahweh, the I am, the Jehovah that we get at Mount Sinai. But now as he's giving the blessing, he uses a different name for God. He says, "May God give you of the dew of heaven," and there he calls him El Shaddai, the mighty one. This is different. These are words of serenity and of blessing. So Isaac, with the full weight of the mightiness and the power of God, is with his hands on his son, is conferring this blessing on his son. "See, the smell of my son is this, the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God, El Shaddai, the mighty one, give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers. and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, Who are you?" He said, "I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it? I ate it all before you came, and I've blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed. There's no taking it back. I gave him the blessing. It's gone." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. And he said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, my father." But Isaac said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob?" Jacob means he takes by the heel, but in Hebrew it became a euphemism for somebody who cheats. He takes it by the heel. It's just one of those strange. "For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Revisionist history is interesting, isn't it? There were 2 people there at the table when he made the deal to give away his birthright. You know, it's not. He makes it sound like he was sleeping in the middle of the night and his brother stole in, opened the safe, cracked the combination code, and stole the blessing. And like, you want to go, wait, Esau, you gave this away. You know, this is. He took my birthright, and behold, now he's taken away my blessing. Then he said to his father, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you. And all his brothers I've given to him for servants. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold," and this blessing always strikes me as I'm not sure I would have wanted this blessing. It sounds like more of a blessing than a curse. Isaac says to Esau, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. I kind of doubt that. I kind of think she was still listening on the other side of the tent. I'm not sure the words had to be repeated very far. Not sure if she's got the glass on the side of the wall on the other side, but she hears. So she sends and calls Jacob, her youngest son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" The Lord add his blessing to our reading of his word. English writer O. Henry has this striking short story called "The Gift of the Magi." And it's always a heart-rending story. You may know the story. It's a young couple in England, 1870s, 1880s. They're struggling. Life is difficult. They've got meager incomes, both of them. They're living in a little flat in a bad area of industrial London, just trying to keep it together. And Christmas is coming. And each of them has a prized possession. He has this beautiful pocket watch that he has inherited either from his dad or his grandfather. It's a family watch and it's his prized possession. But at some point, the chain got lost or broken. So he's got this beautiful pocket watch, but there's not a chain for it. So he's always kind of worried about losing it. He's got it tucked in the pocket of his jacket. And his wife, this beautiful young woman, has this long, beautiful, flowing head of hair down past her waist. And she combs it every day, takes care of it, and they both take great pride in her hair. And as Christmas approaches, they want to make a gift to each other. And she goes to the wig makers, and she cuts off her hair, and she sells her hair to buy a gold chain for his watch. And on Christmas Eve, as they both have come back from work, and they're getting ready for evening tea, and they decide to trade Christmas gifts. And she comes in wearing a hat, wearing a handkerchief over her hair. And she opens this box, and she hands it to her husband as this Christmas gift. He opens it, and he finds this beautiful gold chain for his pocket watch. And he starts to chuckle, and he had a present for her. But his watch is gone. He sold his watch to buy a present for her. And when she opens a gift, it's a beautiful set of combs, a hairpiece to hold her long hair in place. And they've both given what was most valuable for them for the other. As I read the story tonight, this part of that lost blessing, there's 4 people, each of whom in a sense has lost something tremendously precious. And there is this sadness that pervades the story. Esau's loss is the one that gets our empathy most quickly. There are these 2 moments in the story where he raises up his voice and just wails and weeps violently for what he has lost, for what has been stolen from him, for what has been taken from him. But then you think, what did he do to deserve that birthright? They were twins. It's not even as if Esau was born a year or 2 years or 10 years before Jacob. They were in the womb at the same time. They fought in the womb. Who's to say that if the fighting in the womb had occurred a little differently, or if they'd been born by C-section instead of natural, that it's not Jacob that would have come out first? And as Esau comes out, Jacob is holding on to his heel. They're almost born at the same time. It's not even like Esau had a 10-minute head start. The people in Prince Edward Island tell the story of 2 brothers. The only way to really be an islander is to be born on the island. If you're not born on the island, you're not an islander and you're from away. And the story is told of a couple who are expecting twins, and while they're on the mainland, before the bridge existed, while they were on the mainland, she realized she was going into labor. They wanted to make sure their boys were born on the island. And so they made a beeline right for the ferry, caught the ferry by a matter of minutes. And as the ferry was making its way through the choppy waves, getting to PEI, she held on the delivery as long as she could to make sure the boys would be born in PEI, that they would be islanders. Unfortunately, just about a minute or 2 before the ferry docked, one of the twins was born. After the ferry had docked, the second twin was born. The oldest twin is from away. He's not an islander. He was not actually born on the island. He was still in the ferry in the middle of Northumberland Strait. Sometimes those few minutes matter a great deal. And I'm always got the strange feeling with Esau. It's not like he had done something great and wonderful to earn this birthright. It's not like there was this heavy honor that he had worked for and deserved all his life that suddenly was taken away from him. It was an honor that was undeserved, had nothing to do with him at all whatsoever. He just happened to be born a few minutes early, and then at some point, for a bowl of lentil, he'd given it away. And here is Esau in the story, It's like the greatest travesty of justice in the century has been done to him. But we all do this, don't we? The smallest of slights. We lose something that we hadn't worked for in the first place. And it's like suddenly the greatest injustice in history has been perpetrated against us. In several respects, Esau had already disqualified himself. By the time we get to the end of the chapter, we'll read that Esau has already married 2 women, at least, from the local Canaanite area, 2 Hittite women. That was forbidden. Esau had already disqualified himself from all of this. There are 2 interesting references to Esau in the New Testament. One is in Romans, and one is in Hebrews 12. In the list of short exhortations as Hebrews comes to an end after the great hero, after the great faith hall of fame in chapter 12 and 13, there's a series of little exhortation, and they come just as little points one after another. And so Hebrews 12 verses 15 to 17 says this: "See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. That no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. For you know that afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears." It's interesting that they qualify Esau as somebody who is lacking in self-control. He comes back from the hunt really hungry enough that he's willing to give away his birthright for a bowl of soup. He was a man of immediate gratification. He saw 2 good-looking Hittite women that he wasn't supposed to get involved with. Not just one, but 2. He marries them both. On this day, he comes in hungry. He so much wants this bowl of food that he sees before him and the drink that his brother has that he gives away his birthright. As much as we are tempted to have empathy for Esau, what he has lost has not been taken from him. He has given it away. What he has lost, he has given away. And then there's Jacob. Jacob's loss is also striking. Jacob will do anything to succeed. He wants this blessing. He wants this in the worst way. And on the spur of the moment, he will give away and trade away and do whatever it takes to succeed, to come out as number 1. And the problem is that you make the same kind of decisions then as Esau did. Jacob had no self-control either. He wanted the blessing badly enough that he's willing to lie to his blind father. As the story ends, in a sense, Jacob has won. His is the blessing. But he has inherited the blessing. He's gotten the blessing from an old man that he so disrespects and despises that he's taken advantage of him. He's now alienated from his father. He's lost his mother. As the story ends, he's going to be sent away for 20 years. By the time he comes back, his mother is gone. He's going to be years running in fear from his brother. He's going to spend the next 15 to 20 years being deceived, being taken advantage of, bounced from place to place without a friend in the world. In a sense, Jacob thinks he's won as the story ends, but he has given up so much. And then Rebekah's losses mount. Her 2 boys, she says, "I don't want to lose you both on the same day." For the sake of her boy, her favorite, how much she has given up, I think almost including her soul. After this day, she will never see Jacob again, her precious little boy. And in the end, by her conniving and lying and deceiving, she loses Esau as well. If you were Esau in the story, how much would you want to have to do with your mother at the end of this day? And Rebekah had clearly lost Isaac a long time ago. There's something unusual about Rebekah. Of the wives of the patriarchs, she's the only one whose death is not recorded. She's the only one who doesn't get mourned. She's the only one whose burial details we don't have until after the fact. When Sarah dies, Abraham is grief-stricken. The world comes to a stop for weeks and weeks while Abraham and everyone around him mourns and weeps for Sarah. He spends a fortune to acquire a cave that is the first piece of land that Abraham actually buys in the Holy Land. He wanted to buy a cave there because this was the land promised to his descendants, and he wanted his wife to be buried in a place of honor so that when his descendants came back, they would find his wife's tomb. I'm always intrigued every time I do a burial at the mountain, on the cemetery, at the care with which people pick the tombstone of the spouse that they've loved, of their mother, of their dad, of their favorite uncle, as a place of honor. That happens for Sarah when Abraham mourns her. When Jacob loses Rachel, it's like you've ripped his heart out. And again, there's a long burial procedure. But for Rebekah, for Isaac's wife, there's nothing. It's even worse than that. There's a passing comment in Genesis 35, verse 8, and it records the death of Rebekah's nursemaid, the woman she had with her who would have nursed her boys. It's interesting, isn't it? The nanny. In Genesis 35:8, we're told of the day that Esau and Jacob's nanny dies and is buried and is mourned. And then when the verse ends, in the Hebrew, it says, not she was mourned, but they were mourned. Talk about adding insult to injury. It appears, if we've got it right, that Rebekah and the nanny die on the same day. Rebekah is so despised by her two boys that her mourning and her death aren't even mentioned. We don't find out about it for sure until Genesis 49. There's this really strange text at the end of Genesis 49. Joseph is there. He brings his father Jacob, who's since been renamed Israel, and Jacob's dying. And he blesses his 12 boys in Genesis 48 and 49. And in the last 4 or 5 verses, he talks about where he wants to be buried. And he says, okay, this is where I want to be buried. And he makes a comment at the cave in Machpelah. That's where Abraham and Sarah are buried. That's where I buried my father Isaac. And that's where Rebekah is. Just a passing comment, almost as if he hadn't mourned. Oh, what Rebekah has lost. Everything she's done, all her hard work and her conniving for her son, who barely notices when she passes. We don't even think Jacob was there when Rebekah passed away. Esau probably made the funeral arrangements because blind Isaac couldn't. I wonder how much of a funeral Esau planned for Rebekah after this day. How much she has lost. And then I thought, who has lost more than blind old Isaac? When we started several weeks ago, we talked about Isaac, about the faith that was his as a young man, about the way he didn't want to make the same mistakes that Abraham had made, about the way he faithfully prayed for his wife Rebekah to have children, and he waited. He didn't fool around with the maid. He waited for God's timing. God blessed him with 2 boys, and he had started so well that he had such a promising start. And then he and Rebekah started playing favorites, and the seeds of discord were set in. And here's blind old Isaac, clearly estranged from Rebekah. I don't know how tense things were between Isaac and Rebekah before this day, but it couldn't have gotten better at the end of this day. Jacob is sent away, and he's all upset, and he runs off. The 2 boys will only be reunited to bury him when he dies. How heartbreaking. His family is completely exploded, completely gone, completely broken. And every time I read the story, I think this cannot have been God's plan. I mean, God wanted Abraham and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and all of this, and all of this thing, all of this conniving and all of the deceit and all of this heartbreak. And I'm thinking there's no way God's plan was for this family to wind up this way. But it's because nobody waited for God's plan. Everybody connived and tried to work the angles their own way. And this is what happens. And I try and figure out, imagine instead of playing out this way, I wonder what God's plan A was. Can you imagine how great that would have been? I mean, I don't know how he would have done it. But somehow God had it planned that the blessings of Abraham would be passed on to Isaac, and then would be passed on to Jacob, and then you go, well, what about Esau? Yeah, but you remember with Isaac and Ishmael? God meant the blessing for Isaac, and Abraham had the affair with his maid, and Ishmael was born. And do you remember how gracious God was? I mean, to keep things simpler for Isaac, God might have wiped Ishmael from the map, but he didn't. Because God interpreted his promises in the largest, most generous possible sense. He says to Abraham, okay, Ishmael isn't what I had in mind, but it's happened. Ishmael is there. I made you a promise that your son would be blessed. It would become, I'll make it true for Ishmael as well. God always interprets his promises in the largest possible sense. So when God looks at Esau and Jacob, and he gives the prophecy to Rebekah that Jacob is going to be the favored one, that Jacob is going to carry on the tradition, that he's going to carry on the promise that came down from Abraham to Jacob, that Jacob is going to be the one. I don't know what God had in mind for Esau, but I find it hard to believe that he didn't have something planned like he did for Ishmael, the very gracious thing he did for Ishmael. He actually saves Ishmael's life when he goes out in the desert with Hagar. He not only saves Ishmael's life, but Ishmael grows up to be wealthy and to have descendants after him because God is wider and generous and gracious in his promises. So at the beginning, when that prophecy is given to Rebekah that Jacob will be preeminent, it's not that God just had scraps for Esau. I don't know what the plan was, but I know God well enough to know that it was good, that it was gracious, that it had been merciful to Esau. And instead of waiting for that plan to be worked out, Isaac and Rebekah start conniving, start playing favorites, and the whole thing unravels. We have these things that we set our hearts on, that we really, really want. And we'll do anything we think we need to do to make it fall our way. We'll connive against our blind husband behind his back. We'll over-listen on conversations with his son, with his boys. We'll do whatever it takes for our plan to work its way out. And all we had to do was wait for God's good plan and his grace and his mercy to work it out. But we can't wait. We want what we want. We want it now. We want it our way. I often think that Esau, the apple, didn't fall far from the tree. Certainly inherited from Isaac and from Rebekah, as did Jacob. Heartbreaking, isn't it? Heartbreaking. This is what happens when you don't wait for God's time. And yet, God's plan continues on. And we'll see what happens to Jacob in the chapters ahead. Let's pray together. Father, in a sense, I almost hesitate to end at this spot tonight because it's such a heavy point in the text. There's been so much loss and so much heartache and so much heartbreak. So much disrespect. taking advantage of a blind man, disrespect for a father, lying and conniving, kiss of deceit. Father, this is what happens when as human beings we try and work things out our way. This is what happens when our desires come front and center and we don't wait for your timing. Father, we don't know what your original good plan was and how often that's the way it works out. Because of our scheming and our conniving and our desires for immediate gratification, we often never find out what your good plan would have been if only we had waited. Father, teach us to wait on you. Teach us to hear your word, to trust you at your word, and to wait for your way to work its way out. Because you're sovereign, you're gracious, and you're a kind and a merciful God. Help us to trust you. We ask in Christ's name. Amen.